Hello, everyone, and welcome to the African Power Hour. I'm your host, Nadia Abdallah, and it's my pleasure to invite you all here. Now, as you all know, I'm everything Pan-African, from our culture to our music to our storytelling. And the Africa Power Hour is an exciting opportunity for me to share that with all of you. I'll be having different guests who will come on to talk about their story and amplify the importance of a One Africa. Now, as you know, in Kenya, we had the Gen Z movement with a bit of the millennials on the younger side who went on the street to really advocate and amplify the voices because of the things that were happening in the country. Now, I do believe these things happen because of the level of knowledge, the level of intentionality, but also the level of urgency or agency that we need around us. Now, one of the things that came out of the movement, one of the things that came out of the maandamano, which are the protest, was the importance of addressing mental health in our country. Now, I'm so excited that our first episode, we are going to cover everything to do with mental health with an amazing guest. And the reason as to why I'm doing this is because I don't want us to dwell on the dark side of everything that happened, but more so, how do we move forward from this, especially when it comes to looking after our mental health and the intentionalities around us. So I'm very happy and excited to be introducing to you all my guest, Rubie, here today to talk about everything to do with mental health and really the socialism around it. Welcome, Rubie.
Thank you, Nadia, for having me.
You're welcome, and I'm excited. And for those who don't know you, who is Rubie?
I'm Rubie Miseda. I'm a mental health professional, registered and licensed psychologist here in Kenya. And actually, the exciting thing is I'm one of the first batch of psychologists licensed in Kenya with the new act, and we're registered by the Ministry of Health. So that's a very, very big win for Kenyans. I'm also a sociologist and I'm also a criminologist. So I love to combine my disciplines together. And on top of that, I also run Africa Jipende Wellness, which is a mental health organization that has developed holistic mental health programs to assist people from cultural backgrounds. So I try to bring in the mental health techniques and apply it in our cultural context. Our motto is to demystify mental health in Africa with therapy. So we always, the same thing as your storytelling, we also try and do our own storytelling for mental health from people from different ethnical backgrounds.
Okay, that's exciting. And I know I've had my encounter with Jipende, and I know there's an interesting story that I will let you share with everyone once we get deeper into it. But I think I want to start at the place of, for the movement, the Gen Z movement that happened in our country. Yeah. What is your thoughts on it, and why do you think it had any relevancy?
I think it did. It was something as a mental health professional I saw coming, basically interacting with a lot of Gen Zs and just seeing how their form of expression, and they're not afraid to talk about difficult conversations. But I think also people had labeled them, so they really ignored that these are young adults that are coming into themselves. If you see the differences even between millennials and Gen Zs, you can see that Gen Zs have started to develop individualism while still sustaining a community-based society. As for us, I'm also a millennial 91. I've noticed that we've slowly adapted our form of expression from our parents, because if you look at it, we were really punished and it deterred us from expressing how we feel. As for the Gen Zs are millennials' siblings. Yeah. They also have Gen Z younger siblings. And what I've noticed is that the form of punishment that comes with freedom of expression is different. Yeah. As compared to how I was raised. So even working with families, I've seen that these young adults are educated. Most of them have done certificate, diploma, have done degrees. Then on top of that, they are also interacting with the internet. So they also see other people's lives and they also want change, right? But then at the same time, they also notice oppression, right? And this form of oppression means that if they conform to it, it will affect their well-being. Yeah.
Okay. And I have a question. What specific mental health concerns might arise from the activities that the Gen Zs were involved in terms of their social and political space?
I would say there'll be a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, but it can also be tied to post-traumatic stress, PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's because of the insecurity and the way the government has used police brutality and political force to try and suppress their voice. So that could be one. There could also be depression because the this Gen Z movement that is also combined with millennials, because I will say that because I was one who was also participating with my siblings, is depression, right? The disappointment that their voices are not being heard, the losing of hope, right? That the political class are not listening to what they're saying, right? Because they've worked so hard to try and get their voices to be heard. And then all of a sudden, there is a person who's doing double speech. You know, 1 minute I'm listening to you, the next minute I'm not listening to you. It's like a form of emotional and psychological manipulation, which is called gaslighting, right? So the impact of that is a person can start to lose the motivation, because they're not seeing the change that they're asking for.
And that's true. And how can we address the potential traumas? I mean, I was on the streets as well, and I can tell you that tear gas really, I was sick for 2 weeks. But how can we address the potential trauma and anxiety that young people may experience, especially after what happened?
I think number one is I would really advocate for people to seek their mental health, their therapists or their mental health professionals, or also reach out to a friend or a person who has the emotional capacity to allow them to share this emotional experience where they can share how they feel about it and they don't feel alone as they're going through this journey. But because of the way the government has dealt with the youth here in Kenya, I would really advocate for mental health professionals. As for me as a therapist, I was also there on the street with my siblings, and the tear gas was
Something else.
It was something else, but also me supporting, as I call the people who I work with, independent members, supporting them, because as much as there's anxiety, there's a lot of silent rage that has come up. Right? So also the therapist can assist them in emotional regulation or to give them emotional support. Because to be honest, there can be multiple traumas that are happening. So somebody to walk with them. But then also try and also do a lot of self-care. So there's nothing wrong with taking a break, right? And taking time to rejuvenate. And then you can come back and revisit it. Because mass information can also make a person overthink, overanalyze, and that can also affect how they feel.
And that's true. And when we're talking about coping and resilience, especially for young activists, what are some of the health mechanisms that young people can use to manage stress, anxiety, and even emotional exhaustion? Because personally, I know I felt a sense of fatigue and also I don't know, I wouldn't call it depression. I think a sense of sadness, because I think, and I broke down at some point because I was with my friends, and I broke down because I was like, okay, we are young people, and you're looking at an institution fighting young people. I mean, you're seeing grown up police and even leaders and stuff really trying to bring out the police to come and tear gas and others. I mean, there was a point where we were even chased by horses. So that itself, it prompts a level of anxiety, but also a level of despair and sadness. So how does one cope that way?
Okay, I think because this has been something very continuous, and sometimes some coping mechanisms, and I'll be very honest, can work for a short period and others a long period in time. But one of the things is that I would also suggest rejuvenation. So taking time off, like resting, you know, having a nice warm shower, drinking some warm tea, you know, kind of maybe even keeping your mind off the situation. But then there's also this other thing of going for walks, right? And it was very also sad for me to realize that the government had blocked out Arboretum, because that could have been a very comfortable environment for people to just be in nature and to rejuvenate. There's also mindfulness, right? And mindfulness works for some people, where you can do some deep breathing. And then what I usually suggest to people is, if there's so much in your mind, you can write down after the mindfulness, write down and your thoughts. What is it that is happening to you? And then also communicate, right? As we were talking, you're saying you're a very expressive person.
Extremely.
Yes. And sometimes it's good to have emotional support systems where you can express that. Another thing is that you can also steam yourself. You know, most people don't realize that. Yeah, like even doing aromatherapy, right? You can spray like lavender, inhale while you're because what you are trying to do is we're trying to deal with the distress, because the distress is also on your body. The other thing is also stretching to relax yourself, right? To just give your body some rest, because at that point in time your mind is overwhelmed. There's another one that I'm trying to remember, but for those who are fortunate enough, they can even go for like a deep body massage. There's also reflexology, right? That can also really help release the emotional tension on the body. But I'll try and remember the other one, but it keeps on slipping in my mind.
Okay, and what I'm hearing is self-care. And yes, so basically an all-rounded self-care, but with intentionalities.
With intentionalities, but at the same time, you also need, and I will stress this, you also need mental health professionals to help you, because at the same time, I'm giving you these suggestions, but people are uniquely designed. This suggestion may work for them, but may not work for other people. So what I would say that if you get a mental health professional and book a session, they can uniquely help you design a coping mechanism.
And let's talk about resilience and hope. How can we cultivate that? Because honestly, I don't know. I had for 9 years, I've had like my Kenyan band. And I remember after going for the protest, I cut it off, because I'm a very resilient person, but I've gotten to a point where, from what I saw, what I heard, what I'm still seeing, I don't see any hope, honestly. And so how can we cultivate that, especially on a mental health practitioner point of view? How can we cultivate hope back into our minds and convince ourselves that we are meant to be here and we are meant to push the agenda?
Okay, I want to look at it from also a sociological perspective, right? The reason why I'm bringing that is because we can also look at it through history, right? I think, and I will not deny it, I think the older generation has affected us, from their parental exposure to even their form of governance. But it doesn't mean that this young generation, their time won't come. So I think that creating community spaces in which people can share intellectual ideas and come up with civic education as a way of also tackling this political system. You see, it's a system, right? It's a reform. I think sometimes it comes with the way we fear the political class, of course, because they would use force and they would use their money. But this is an intelligent generation, right? So Kenya shouldn't be defined by the political class. Kenya should be defined by your sense of self, and also the way the community is now being designed, the social change. For example, like you, Nadia, right? You are a beautiful, intelligent woman, right?
Thanks,
You're welcome.
And so are you.
Oh, thank you so much. And we're here talking about Pan-Africanism in terms of mental health and in terms of storytelling. You are part of the change. this is a part of what Kenya is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be defined only by the political class. Even what happened with the protests, the way people said that they're leaderless, tribeless, and fearless. That is part of the social change. We come from a society that is very tribeless. But then even with millennials and Gen Zs, you probably have friends from different tribes, but you don't look at them based on their tribe. That's what the new Kenyan looks like. It's just that how do we bring that social awareness
back into it?
And
I mean, you're right. And like for me, most of my social circles, most of my friends, first of all, we really care less. And in fact, we care more about where we're going to get the next grind and, where we're going to go on holiday, those kind of things. But I feel like it's quite sad that we are at a time where still there is a certain percentage of young people who still take advantage and pivot on what we are trying to fight against. So my question is, do you think that comes out of fear, selfishness, or misinformation?
It could be a contribution of both, right? And the reason why I'm saying contribution of both, because there are different forms of influences that can govern a person on why they're doing what they're doing. But you see, even with the Gen Z movement, everyone is saying it's been hijacked. Which I understand.
Which it has, to some extent.
But you see, like when somebody starts a business, right? They always have their vision, their mission. I think this movement is an ideology.
Ideology.
That is being spread across, right? We're now redefining what it is to be Kenyan. I remember there's a time when they were, because you're a millennial, you remember, they were trying to find the Kenyan national outfit.
I remember.
How did that go?
Complete fail.
Exactly. Because at that time there was so much disunity and conflict. But then now what Kenyans are being seen, they're being seen as educated, eloquent, people who are actually political activists, people who want accountability, people who want their well-being to be taken into consideration, their quality of life. That's now a new form of...
It's true. It's a new form of Kenya, and I do hope, because one of the things I love the most is the fact that people are very knowledgeable and the right information is being shared as compared to,
It is being shared, but what you can see is a huge disparity between intergenerational dialogue, right?
Yes. Anyway, so I want to ask about empowering Gen Zs for the future, right? How can we empower Gen Zs to continue their advocacy work while also taking care of their mental being? Because, advocacy, I love to identify as an advocate rather than an activist. Now, I'm going to explain why I do that, because a lot of people tend to always disagree with me. I believe activism is necessary to activate a certain urgency into a certain space, a certain industry, a certain community. Advocacy, it's what formulates policy. It's what makes things sustainable. It's what creates a ripple effect for the future generation. And so my question is, how can we now integrate that, especially for Gen Zs, and empower them to understand that advocacy is actually the sustainable way? And most of them are activists, which is a phenomenal job. But how do we now empower them for
advocacy? I like how you've explained that. As African people, we are a community-based society, right? And I would say we should create spaces in which we can educate, in which we can have discussions. I think right now the media is definitely bringing in a few Gen Zs or people from the movement and millennials, and then they're bringing politicians, and you can see the intergenerational dialogue disparity there. But I think we need to create more workshops, more airtime, podcasts, where we can shape it from activism into advocacy, right? And also with taking care of their mental health. I think one of the things is bringing this whole concept of sense of self to come about. The reason why I'm saying that, because it allows people to see themselves in a holistic manner, which allows them to also now see their situation with a broader perspective and also interacting with other people. But I think for the Gen Zs, I would advertise for everyone to literally go and find a therapist, find someone who can help you build a relationship with yourself, right? Because once you have built your relationship with yourself, now you can also create support systems and communities and different ideas on how to help people work on their mental health while also trying to change the policies. Because what I've also seen with this whole movement is how the government has also been trying to bring their other agencies to try and talk about it. But you see, what is quite interesting is it's the same strategy that they used to do before.
Yeah, this definitely, and nothing will fruit out of it. And now, when we're talking about that, what roles does fostering a sense of agency and self-worth help when it comes to playing the role of continued mental health?
I think because if you look at the concept of self-worth, it's more of having a positive core belief system, finding that you're good enough. And with a core belief system, it influences your thoughts, your feelings, right? And also your behavioral response. Yeah. And it also has attached with it evidence, right? And you use that evidence to continuously have this core belief system. And now this belief system comes from your relationship with people and your experiences. So that tied to the development of sense of self-worth, it makes a person feel like they can love themselves for who they are, and people can also see them for who they are, which brings positive self-esteem and improves their self-esteem, which allows them to feel confident to go out and take the necessary steps, as you said, into advocacy. Yeah.
Okay, and what practical steps can young people take when it comes to maintaining their mental health while fighting for change? Because that's a very...
Yes, that's a very tricky one.
Yeah.
I think what's really unfortunate and we take into consideration is the continuous multiple traumas being thrown at us.
Yeah.
And you see, the reason as to why I would say that sometimes it's okay to try and meet your own emotional needs.
Okay.
Yeah, an emotional need is the way you want to be supported. And then we have the emotional need, which is the way you felt like you're not being supported. And you can clearly see that with the responses of the political class to the youth.
They have emotional wounds more than emotional needs, the political class.
I feel like the political class need to develop introspection. I would say that for a long time, we may not realize that people with personality disorders could be governing.
Yeah.
And we could be experiencing narcissistic abuse. Yeah. Gaslighting. And I think there's something interesting that I was learning in sociology, and there was a man called, there's this man called Goffman, and then there's this man called Elias Norbert, and they talk about social change and basically behavior. And there's also another man called Pierre Bourdieu, and he talks about this concept of habitus and cultural capital. And you see, if we look at even what's happening with the protests from a historical point of view, when the colonialists left, what did they leave? They only left political power, but then they went with economic power. What happens is that because we want to prove to our colonial adoptive parents, yes, we tend to try and show off. So we built this lifeist type of way of living. That's why you see the looting, the big cars. It's to also show that even me, I can do it at the expense of other people. Yeah. And if you think about it, Kenya is a very, very classist society.
Yeah.
If you dig deeper, because you're talking about Pan-Africanism, right? Didn't we have the educational policy? And what did it do? It separated us based on language, right? And all of a sudden, Kiswahili is seen as who labeled English to be the best?
Same people who left us without economic power.
Exactly. So what do? You cripple them. Yeah? If you look at our political class, what do you see?
A lot of things, but I see people who are really trying to
keep up.
Yes.
Keep up with appearance.
Yes, keep up with appearance, but also trying to define, like, we are there and you're here. Yeah.
The British Didn't they have the royal family?
They did.
Right? Did they have the aristocrats, the bourgeoisies, and then everyone at the bottom were peasants?
It's the same.
How much have the political class adopted from their colonial?
A lot. I would say 85% of everything. Yeah.
So what happens is you bring people who probably don't understand the struggle, or maybe had a bit of a struggle. And then what happens is you become so emotionally attached.
But it's very interesting because if you listen, because there's this song that is always sang, I came from this, I didn't have shoes, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, and now I'm like this, and you can't help but wonder, if you definitely did come through that and went through all that, then why do you forget the rest when you get to a point where you have 1,000 shoes and each shoe is worth, I don't know, 2 million, 3 million? Like, I want to know, on a psychological point of view, is there a certain detachment that happens, a psychological thing that happens when people, because I'll take an example of myself. At 28, yes, I did rise to power, right? And it's not like I come from a rich family. It was a middle class family that was hardworking, and they took me outside, right? But when I was in that position, nobody right now, and if anyone says that, I think it's a lie. Nobody would say that I was very classist or I wanted to accumulate so much. In fact, there was even somebody who made fun of me on TikTok, saying that while everybody else was looting, I was busy working hard. So, but I came from a point of, because I'm here, I would want to be an example. But also I want to build my social capital, as compared to people who are now, like, there are people who I was with and they have way more than me, but I can still walk on the streets and I have no problem.
And you see, that's what you said, social capital. And this goes back to what I was telling you, sociologically. The reason as to why sometimes people forget is because there is a distaste to how they felt being in a lower class. Right. Remember, we can't even deny the fact that majority of these people are men, right?
Yes.
And traditionally, men are protectors and providers because we are in Africa, we're in Kenya. Depending if they were, even if they were Indian or Arab, it's the ethnical group, and there's traditional roles. But then you see, the thing is that there's this assumption that people think, if I have more money, if I take more money, people are going to, yes. And if I show, then it shows that I'm above someone. So for them, it could be more individual, not like for you, where you said it's social. It could be, I'm here to set up myself, to set up my children, and to finally be accepted into the elite society.
So from what I'm hearing is, when it comes to leadership, we just have to really, there needs to be like a reshuffle of leadership strategies and ways.
And a new generation. This generation that is in power is not, they are children who were born in the colonial era. Just imagine what kind of exposure they had gotten. Work hard, don't express how you feel. The emotional capacity is not really there. Some are there, I will not deny.
Definitely. But that also, it makes sense when we say, when we talk about our parents, and we're like, we shouldn't be too hard on them because they didn't know better. So is it also right to say the political class born during the colonial time didn't know better, and it's up to us to now pave a different way?
We have to pave a different way, and we also have to acknowledge, even if they didn't know better, there was a negative impact.
Okay. All right. So what is your message to Gen Z listeners who might be struggling with their mental health right now?
I would say is to normalize the conversation about mental health. I think that you guys are doing a wonderful job in expressing how you feel about the political situation. And I also think that's, if you can continue with the civic education, that would be very beneficial. But always take care. Your mental health comes first. And please shop around, get a psychologist. As you are fighting for your freedom, let somebody support you during that journey.
All right. And can you share some youthful, friendly mental health resources? And I guess, I don't know if it's helplines or any information available.
You can also find us at Jipende Wellness, but you can also call there's the Kenya hotline. Yeah. Red Cross also has it. UNRest also has it. So that way, if you need support, there are also mental health. If you go online and there are many mental health professionals now coming up in Kenya. So please use that opportunity.
Okay. And generally to the Pan-African reach, what's your call to action? Especially when it comes to mental health, but I can also hear a lot to do with leadership and really ownership of the narrative.
I think for me as a mental health advocate, that's why I have created Africa Jipende Wellness. I created these programs, and this is the way of me as supporting my fellow African people, is to change the African social development. Yeah. And to change, and so it can change how the level of our maturity around us changes in the way we interact with each other. So my call to action is to normalize mental health in Africa. Create techniques that can be applied in the cultural context, because if a person heals from their mental health, they can change so much about policies and advocacy.
That's true.
So that's how I'm supporting.
All right, thank you so much, Rubie. And there you have it. That is the ultimate African Power Hour with myself, Nadia Abdallah, and our guest today, Rubie. And mine is to just remind you all that mental health is real, it's important. So whether you're an activist, an advocate, a politician, a creative, a musician, whatever it is on the Pan-African reach, you have to take care of your mental health first. And you know what? It's not too bad to check in with your emotions. And sometimes you can cry a little here and there. But what's important is to be knowledgeable and understand that in order for you to do anything in this world, in order for you to be the greatest African and Pan-African out there, you have to be in touch with yourself. And just remember, it starts with you before anyone else. And by the way, make sure you subscribe to the Africa Power Hour, because you are not ready for what's about to come your way.